back for another episode of Evolving Heights, the podcast, which is a space where high performers and visionaries really come to realign with what truly matters. And this is really going behind and beneath the surface level of success and actually tuning into your inner world that creates your outer results. And today I'm really pleased to be joined by someone whose work has really influenced me in my life and my journey, but also many others in that element of transformational coaching, particularly elements such as patterning, which brings depth, precision, and just clarity to the journey of personal evolution. And that is Mareli Datema. And Marley has worked extensively over the years in coaching. She's run her own businesses. She's now in partnership with her partner, and I just know from her work that she's supported many individuals to really uncover those subconscious patterns that are running the lives and our scripts behind the scenes. And she's helped them make so many powerful shifts and insights, myself included, just through presence and awareness. And I'm really excited to hear and delve into this conversation where we hear a little bit about Marley's blends of just energetic sensitivity with grounded coaching and those catalysts which really allow that change from the inside out. So, without further ado, today's conversation, we're going to be diving into a little bit about, well, we'll see what happens, but I'm interested to hear a little bit more about what patterning really is, if you're coming across this term for the first time, how we move beyond just pure mindset alone, and really what it takes to create real transformation that lasts. So if you've ever wondered what and why some of those patterns keep repeating in your life, despite all the effort, this one's for you. So let's dive straight in, Mareli. Thank you for coming on and welcome.
No, thank you for having me. You're making me sound very professional there.
Well, you're absolutely.
I do appreciate it. No, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for having me. I was quite excited, but yeah, it sounds like we're gonna have a very interesting conversation. So let's go for it.
Yeah. Well, just for anyone that's maybe tuning in and not come across you for the first time, why would you just give us a little bit of a flavour as to some of your journey and how you got into coaching per se and where you're at now and how things have evolved for you?
Yeah, of course. So I've been on my personal development / coaching journey for probably a good 8 to 9 years now. So I already just started my early 20s. Well, mid-20s, I'm giving my age away now. But basically, so I ended up having a very depressed, so I had 2 kids, got a lot happening, and I ended up becoming very clinically depressed, basically. And something had to change. So I was kind of at a point where I was planning on divorce. We had no money. There was no finances. To be fair, how I did it, I have no idea, to be honest, at the same point. And I was clinically depressed to the point that my husband had to check in on me basically several times a day. I then decided to go down a journey of personal development. Not on purpose. Well, it wasn't actually, the funny thing is I didn't actually realize that's what I was doing, which is quite the funny thing is, because I actually went to a business seminar and I came across someone speaking on stage, and then like Ryan Pinnick, and then basically he spoke about something I had no idea what I was speaking about. To be honest, I'm going to be very honest, I had no idea what he was speaking about. All I knew is I had to do it. I will be very honest. And I signed up. That's the only thing I signed up for. And I kind of went down that journey. Why was it the best business seminar? I have no idea. I think it was more just the fact of I knew I had to snap out of whatever I was going through. And so I was kind of just clutching at straws. And then this happened. And then my journey basically started. So my journey started, I went through the whole personal development phase. Obviously got in touch with what I was going through, why it was happening, getting clear of my subconscious mind, my limiting beliefs and everything that I was kind of feeding myself and all the patterns that I was kind of following in order to because I kept on, I had a journey of going into depression quite a lot. So I would go into depression, I would come out of it and then go into depression again and coming out of it. And, so something had to be done. In some ways, well, I say that now, knowing what I know now, but back then you don't think about it. You're just why am I always in this state? But I didn't know. And then obviously going through my journey, I realized what was happening. And then as I kind of developed, and grew those, I became less and less depressed. I'm not saying I don't become depressed anymore. However, now I do have the tools and techniques to deal with it. It's not the same. So I know what's happening now. So I'm able to deal with it in a different way. But basically then I didn't. And then as I kind of grew and did it, sorry, I've got a blue light shining over my face. I started my own coaching journey as well, because I was like, okay, this is something I can use, because I knew of some people who were kind of going through the same thing I didn't. And indirectly, I kind of like, oh, do you want me to help you? And then we're like, and they were like, so one I had, and it was kind of a friend of mine, and she was like, yes, I will. And then I helped her for free. But then I had a couple of people referrals, so I kind of had a few of my own clients. I was like, oh my God. And then I did that for a little while. And then, as you know, my journey went further into coaching, where I actually became a coach, where that was kind of like more of a, not a full-time thing, but a bit more of a full-time thing that I did. And I had you and plenty others, and I did that. And then, yeah, so now like as you said, I work in business with my partner. I've had businesses along the way. So I had product businesses as well, coaching business, which I did. And then now I work with my partner as well as my husband. So quite a full fair few things, but like I said, my life and my journey kind of takes me where I think the universe feels I've got lessons to learn. So I've learned to go with the flow. I've learned to kind of go where life takes me and just be open to opportunities that lands in my lap, and
Nice one.
it comes.
Yeah, I think it's lovely to, you get to a stage where you start to feel your way through life a little bit more. And just touching on what you were saying there about what I find when so many people get into a coaching position or journey, it's really coming from a place of previous pain themselves that they're trying to almost cure. I mean, I can only speak for myself, where I can resonate entirely with those waves of depression, which you don't realize at the time because it just becomes your norm. And then, similar to you, it's maybe something that doesn't live with you or reside with you in the same degree as it once did, but you will potentially, and I certainly do, have those moments where it comes on me. And some people that probably met me wouldn't realize that, in terms of who I am or and I think that just is testament to our own resilience and the strength that we have, because we show up time and time again, even in spite of that. And I heard even yesterday that I love this whole analogy of depression is just really from a spiritual, your soul, your body needing deep rest, depressed. So it was beautiful, no, and yeah, you have certainly had a nice journey, and you touched on there about Ryan Pinnock, and that's how we met through Super Genius in the coaching capacity. And as I said at the beginning, one thing that I would love to hear a little bit more about, which was the kind of like patterning work that you did, and even just hearing about your experience of that, how you came across it, what drew you to make it a core part of something that you got involved in as part of your coaching and teachings for others.
Yeah, so I mean, as you know, patterning is a workshop that is run by Super Genius, and it's basically so patterning is a form of steps. I want to say a form of steps because everyone is different. Everything takes a different form. Everyone has a different way it kind of comes about, and the universe basically is a form of steps that you take that will unconsciously sabotage every end result that you're going for. So every goal, every vision, everything that you set yourself out for will follow the same set of patterns, like the same set of steps, basically. And it's not to say that you won't create what you want, like you will create some goals, you will have some goals. However, once you know what your pattern is, or once you know what steps you take, there are easier way to do it, and to get there. But basically the whole frame is that you will, with everything that you're doing, you will take the same steps with everything that you're doing, and your unconscious mind will bring in from the universe, whatever it is doing, the same things, the same situations, the same scenarios, in order to avoid you creating your end results. Now, the thing with this is that it sounds a bit scary, because like, but how will I ever create what I want? But the thing is that it's not actually that scary, because this is all run from your ego. So if you know anything from your ego's point of perspective, so your ego is kind of the thing which is like your limiting beliefs, the things that's your unconscious mind that's keeping you in a point of like not taking action. So you are not writing the book you want to write, you are not learning to ride a motorcycle if you want to ride a motorcycle, you are not doing the things that you would love to do because it feels unsafe to you. Like you have a fear inside of you. You have, it's stopping you from doing. So this is where procrastination, laziness, whatever you call it, kind of comes from a point. And it's actually, in a sense, it's actually not a bad thing, because all it's doing is keeping you safe and from being seen. Because let's be very honest, being seen online, being seen in public, being seen in big groups of people, being seen doing something successfully brings attention. And your ego is not aware of that, like not aware of it. Your ego is aware of it, but your ego doesn't want that, because what does attention bring? Attention brings judgment, it brings ridicule, it brings, people who you think were friends, you realize they're not really your friends anymore. It brings a lot of scenarios that you don't actually want to deal with. But a lot of this can be unconscious to you if you've not uncovered exactly what it is holding you, because everyone, like I said, has got different things that's holding them back. Some people, like I said, like I've got depression. So depression was one of my states that kind of drew me back from what I was creating, because I didn't want to be seen. So we all have different things that's created, but however, so patterning kind of goes to the point that when you go through patterning, you uncover exactly what steps you're taking in your ego's perspective. So in your ego's perspective, you realize what steps you're taking in every scenario that you're doing in order to sabotage your end result. And so what happens once you know what steps you're taking, and this is the tricky part, is that you don't actually stop your pattern. You can't stop your pattern from actually still following through. However, what you can do is work around each step coming from a higher perspective. So instead of getting angry in one step where you would have normally gotten angry, and by the way, you're not really going to this is a very bad example because you're not going to catch angry very often, but just as an example. So if for example, you had a confrontation and you get angry, the next time you do it, because you're evolving, you're becoming more aware, you're aware of what you're doing, you're aware of what you're feeling, you're aware of what you're going through, then once you know that's usually how you would have reacted previously, not knowing this information, now that you know the information, how would you act now? Would you act angry? Would you not act? Because now you're kind of in a position like, okay, actually, there is another way. I can still create what I want. And that's basically how you do it. So yeah, so your pattern will run no matter what you're doing, but it's a form of a higher awareness, a higher intuitive form that you have with yourself and with the universe, actually, because I would say like I call it it's a relationship with the universe. Yeah. The thing is, we unconsciously send out these signals, and the universe sends us these, things that we think we need or want. And it's a give and take relationship, except we don't know what we're doing until you become aware of what patterns that you're sending out, what steps you're doing. And until you do, it basically then, like I say, you build a relationship with the universe and it becomes different. You're able to adjust the things that you need to do in order to get what you want in an easier and manageable and a little kinder way.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I remember when we sat down to do it, and I remember being in that small group, and it's interesting how you elicit that information as to what the pattern is, because it was almost like three stories, one being a very short term, medium term, and long term goal that you try to attain, and then just looked for as we said, the pattern, in terms of the routine. I thought, how could this be so? Because one of them had to be like, I think I chose like a relationship, a job that I went for, and being late that day for the session.
I made you use that. I forced you to do
Yeah,
that
I know you
one.
did.
And
But I didn't want to tell you.
how much anger do you have towards me for that?
I don't want to tell you. And this isn't the purpose of this story for us going into that. But no, it was just so interesting. I remember when we were trying to figure out, okay, what is the next step in everyone's journey? Then something synchronistically would happen in the environment that would almost correlate with the next step.
Yep.
So, for example, someone left the room, or you would even hear a siren in the background from the, like a fire truck
Ambulance or something. Yep.
yeah, and it's those when you talked about that universal relationship, and it's almost like it's the vibration or the frequency that we're talking about there effectively as well. That when we're all concentrated collectively on the same thing, then we are getting the answers, so to speak, of what we're looking for as well. It's always communicating with us.
Yep, 100%. So there's clues all around you the whole time during the workshop, like as you experience, like everything that happens in the workshop happens for a reason, every single thing. And it's the most surreal experience.
Yeah, so it was an interesting couple of days. So when many people hear the word pattern, they might not fully grasp what it means in that coaching element. So, I mean, how do we define what a pattern is, and how does it? I know we've kind of went into that somewhat. Can we really just how does it differ from maybe like a belief or a mindset, that a pattern?
Yeah, so belief or mindset is kind of, obviously like I'm not good enough, or unloved, no one wants to help me. Those are kind of like the beliefs that you have within yourself. So basically everything that you try kind of go for, or anything that you do, you're kind of like, oh, but no one will ever come to my rescue, which is kind of what I call it, no matter which one you have, whether it's, not good enough or helpful, whatever it is, that basically that no one will ever come to your rescue, no matter what your belief is. And the beliefs kind of like, in my view, it always comes to the point that your beliefs will kind of make you feel like you are meant to go through this world alone. Like it kind of goes through the world alone. However, patterning in a sense of like everyone has a pattern of behavior, which is where it becomes different. So pattern of behavior, like I said, is things like that you kind of do. Some people, to be fair, will already know to some degree what they are doing, or to some degree what their friends are doing, their family are doing, because it will always kind of end up being something. So say, for example, you have someone that can't take responsibility for their actions, as an example. So some things happened, they've made you felt in some way, shape or form, how do I say, some way, shape or form that made you feel bad. So example, you have an argument with someone, they've done something that make you feel bad, and you're like, well, you've done this, I kind of feel like you make me feel bad about this, but it's not my responsibility, something was their responsibility. But instead of taking responsibility for the thing that they've done, they then turn it on you. Well, but you did this and this and this, and you did this and this and this, it's one example. So basically people have those things where they do. So you'll kind of, when you have friends that like someone always does that, so then what happens is you don't communicate with that person so much anymore, as an example, because you kind of pull back. You're like, well, if I tell them this, they're just going to react this way, and they're just going to do it this way. So they follow that pattern. So there's more things. Or there's some people who are overgivers completely. You're like, well, I don't want to ask this person for help because they will help me so much, and then I will feel guilty because they've like overdone what I've asked of them, and then I feel guilty, and then I feel I have to repay them. So you don't ask someone for help because of that reason. So it comes in all different ways. There's not one way. So there's kind of like, those are pattern of behaviors. So that, by the way, are things that would be in those people's pattern. That's kind of pattern behaviors that would be. But again, unless you sit with someone and do their pattern, you won't know how it exactly comes about and what the unconscious, reasoning is for all of that. But basically, so what patterning then does, it basically draws out exactly what steps you take to get to that point where you don't take responsibility, or you do take responsibility, or you get to a point where you overgive, or you overlove, or you pull away and become, aloof to everything that's happening around you. So it's more of a sense of getting exactly the step from beginning to end, exactly what steps you're taking in order to act in the way that you're acting, and then not getting what you want at the end. That's, in a nutshell, what it is.
Through this conversation, made me think that I need to revise and go back to my notes and say, okay, what am I doing? My pattern. Nice. And obviously, you've worked with so many people that are, potentially already successful when they come to work with you in different guises of their life, yet they still perhaps maybe feel blocked in other areas. What would you even say amongst like high performing individuals? What's the patterns you most often come across, or when you worked on this with them? Is there anything per se?
Well, high performance. So obviously, you're never a finished project. No matter how high performing you are, no matter how much awareness you have, no matter how much courses you've taken, no matter how much you've done all those books you've read or whatever, you will never a finished product. So that's the first thing. So, and the thing is, when it comes to their patterns and things, generally speaking, when high performers is usually, when you say high performance, I'm guessing you're talking in a business sense and kind of like
in a professional sense, then
professional sense. So generally speaking, these people will most often, if they're not going down a development journey or anything like that, generally speaking, they would probably have relationship issues, or issues that's outside of business, that is affecting their business in some way, shape or form, but not as much as someone who's very successful in relationships, but not so successful in business, or vice versa. Of course, you do get people who are successful in, all around. However, again, like I said, that takes a lot of awareness, a lot of studying, a lot of reading, a lot of, and taking responsibility across the board and knowing what your patterns are and things like that. But generally speaking, we all fail in some way, shape or form. We're all holding plates up in the air. And everyone will reach, no matter how high performing you are and no matter what you're doing, at every level before you go to the next one, you will reach a point where you have to ask yourself, well, which plate am I willing to drop?
Mm.
And I think for me, that was probably one of the biggest things I had to learn when I was going through my journey, and getting to where I am today. It's the fact that I had to learn to be okay to drop plates
Mm-hmm.
and be okay with people being angry at me for that.
Mm.
And that was tough. Like that was really tough. However, saying that, because I had to go through that experience, because I had to make that decision and strengthen myself in going for what I wanted, not at the sake of anyone else, but basically putting people in position where they had to take responsibility for their own things and it not
Mm-hmm.
being my responsibility. Which, by the way, is very, very difficult for moms because we kind of hold everything up, a lot of it, a lot.
Yeah.
And I had to start dropping some of those plates and
Mm.
basically learn that. And because of that, because I've been through the experience and I had to do that and learn that, it kind of, in a sense, made me first realize no one's going to die. Let's be right. Like, no one's going to die because you're dropping plates. No one's going to, okay, relatively speaking, I mean, I'm just talking about like, it's not just my responsibility to pack the snacks. It's not just my responsibility to do admin. It's not just my responsibility to talk about things, like in life, not, anything like just don't drive the car and give up everything and, crash or anything like that. But first of all, people will get angry, but no one's dying.
Mm.
People will go against you. You will be judged, which I was a lot, by family members, by friends, by a lot, which, to be fair, I kind of knew it was coming, but not to the extent it was. I have to say the extent was a shock and probably would be to a lot of people. And I had to be okay with people being like that towards me. And
Mm.
that's, again, made me realize that when you put things down, when you drop plates, it's actually not the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah.
Because who you are building and what you're building on top of this is basically getting there is someone stronger, better, and also everyone benefits from it eventually in the end,
Totally.
which I didn't say at the beginning, by the way. But when you start doing that, you'll realize quickly how people around you will start taking responsibility for things they didn't think was their responsibility and how much they will grow as a result, even though, or they'll pick up their stuff and leave. Either way, you will win.
Mm. I mean, that we could go down so many different avenues with that in itself, in terms of relationships and you, and just realizing that what they say and do says more about them as well. But
Exactly.
equally, touch on that point, you can only ever really concentrate on one thing or do one thing at a time, and there will be seasons where you're possibly giving one area of your life probably more focus. And I was saying that to one of my clients that, when it's kind of like a juggling act between, if you think about your relationships, it's not just your relationship with yourself, it's got maybe a partner, your friends, your family, co-workers. Then you've got your health, but that comes down to your mental health, your spiritual health, your physical. Then you've got your finances, your business, career, the hobbies, lifestyle. I mean, there's so many things to be constantly contending with that, not all those balls are in the air at the same time. There will be those seasons. And I love that idea of, one of my clients was even saying this to me yesterday, how when you start to evolve, then obviously you're changing. So
Yep.
people are not going to recognize you and how you're evolving because you're still trying to understand, okay, who is this version of me? And you're kind of feeling your way to the top. But then others are going to feel a little bit threatened because your identity is changing. They won't necessarily know how to interact and correspond with you. And it's sometimes nice because it will show those people that are there that are really, see the good even in your feelings and support you. And other people, it will just reveal more about, who's in your corner sometimes. And also knowing that everyone's not always meant to be in the full journey always at every stop. Some people go off the bus and then back on it. And yeah, you kind of need to shed some layers sometimes in that relationships, habits, to allow yourself to experience new versions of the version of you that experiences a different lifestyle, I suppose, and different results.
Yeah, exactly. So it's basically, it is, it's about, but like I said, not everyone's meant to go on the whole journey with you. Like some are here to teach you a lesson, some are here to stay with you with the whole journey, and some are um, and some will come in seasons. Like there was an analogy, like some are a tree stump, some are trees branch, and some are leaves. The leaves are people who just come very, very shortly, teach you something or take something from you that you need to learn. You learn that. Branches are people that stay a little bit longer, maybe a few years. You know, again, you learn from them, they learn from you, but eventually the branch breaks off and they go. And then you have your drunk people who are the ones who stay with you towards the end. So, and you know, the thing is like, and this is also the thing that people don't always realize is you actually get to choose who goes on the journey with you. You don't have to stay friends with people. You don't have to stay friends with, you know, in touch with people. You don't have to, because at the end of the day, your peace of mind and who you are and who you want to become. And by the way, people can change 100%. You know, is more important than keeping someone else happy.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you are the only person who's going to spend time with you
Yeah.
from the beginning to end.
Totally.
You know, from the day you're born to the day you die, it's you. So yes, you have people on your journey and you get to choose that. But at the end of the day, everyone internally, whether they say it or not, they want a happy, fulfilling life. And in order to have a happy, fulfilling life, you sometimes have to put yourself first. And if that means not being friends with someone or cutting someone off or deciding a season has ended with some people, which I have done, to be fair, quite a bit.
Me too. And it's not from a place of malice. And sometimes
No,
we hold
100%.
on to relationships longer than what we should because of the past, because of how much time we've invested. But you can outgrow, you know, people
100%.
and circumstances, and giving yourself permission as
Yeah.
well in an adult way to do that with them is not something I don't think that we're really.
You're not taught to do that.
No, we're not.
And the thing is, like, we're also, and this very much so, well, my generation of girls, I would say, we were raised, especially me, like kind of old fashioned still, that it's our responsibility to keep everyone happy. Literally, that is literally how we were raised. And that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to have on you. Like, you know, it's your responsibility to keep your friends happy. It's your responsibility to keep your family happy. It's your responsibility to keep everyone happy. Because we were also raised in this time, you know, where it was all about the man, it was all about the boy in the house because they carry the surname and it's up to them to carry the surname forward, you know, and you have to keep, because you have to submit to your husband. So I was very much raised in the church family. So you have to submit to your husband, you have to submit to your, you know, everything. And then indirectly, we are taught that it is, you know, our responsibility, and there's a lot of pressure to do that. And I have to say, like, one of the things I did decide to do. So, by the way, just I do believe in God and I do believe in the universe. I just don't believe in one religion as such. So I do believe everyone has their God, and I, you know, I'm happy for everyone, everything like that. And I do believe there's a God. I just don't believe in one specific religion. And one thing that I decided to do in my late teens, early 20s, was to step out of the church, not go back. And the amount of guilt and ridicule I felt, first of all, because obviously it was ingrained in me for so many years. And yes, I felt a lot of guilt and a lot of ridicule and everything that towards me, which is probably another reason that put me into like severe depression because of that. Because by the end of the day, I wasn't happy. And I actually chose my own happiness over it, but I felt so guilty for it to start off with. Now I don't anymore, obviously, because I've evolved, I've grown, I've learned a lot, you know, everything like that. But that was a very, very tough thing. And I've got nothing against religion, you know, if that's what everyone is for, I'm happy for that. I've got no judgment whatsoever. But just for me personally, on a personal point, it's not something that was making me happy. It's not something that was for me. But like I said, I do believe there is a God. I do believe in the universe, and I kind of have all of that. And I do believe in prayer and everything like that. I just don't believe in one specific religion as such for that reason.
I think, you know, more and more nowadays, I hear more people coming round to this element of not just thinking about our mental health and our physical health, but our spiritual health. And that's what we're kind of touching on here. We're not talking about it in a religious sense, because what science calls, you know, source energy, some religions call God, other people call it source, the universe. And I kind of just put it under all these umbrella little terms that just mean a higher being, a higher power, effectively. And when you kind of realize that they're all kind of coming at it from probably very different angles, but kind of translating the same message to some degree. it's building up an element of faith, which doesn't necessarily mean religious faith, because I don't class myself, similar to you, to be religious, but my spiritual faith is obviously evolving more and more. And I remember being quite, it wouldn't be something I would say to people, because I thought people think I'm talking about God and religion. And it's funny because I'll interchange the words God or universe, and even when I think of you talking about prayer there, it's not praying and the hoping for something to come, because that again is like praying to an entity or something out with you, rather than that inner knowing of already having and being worthy.
Yeah.
Because so many of us are trying to, rather than seek worth and develop a sense of, okay, I need to get X, Y, and Z lined up before I feel that I'm good enough. It's trying to remember that you already were, and you already are.
Exactly. You already have it in you. It's same as like the concept, religion teaches that God's already in you.
Totally.
So, and it's a matter of basically tapping into that. So if God is already in you, then you're able to tap into the strength, into the faith, into the hope, into everything that's already inside of you, which is everything that you need in order to create what you want, whether it be a relationship, business, life, whatever it is, it's already there.
I think lovely on that one, some people talk about like your imagination being God's eye. If you think about God being the creator and everything that you stem, everything that we experience, any relationship you've got, any personal possession, the building that you're in, the clothes that you wear, you've all started once in the unseen in someone's mind. They had to think about it before it became visible. So that's what, a lot of people will refer to in terms of that you being one with the creator, so to speak, because you've got that ability to preview in your mind's eye that what before it's seen in the physical. So yeah, I love these kind of connotations and just different angles from it. One thing that you touched on there as well was that whole ethos and that expectation to please others.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're effectively trying to maneuver around other people's fleeting moods and wants and desires and emotional states, which is, a very heavy burden that I know very many parents, and even bosses and people in professional capacities, we always seem to trying to keep everyone in the camp happy, at the expense of ourselves.
Of ourselves, yeah, exactly.
And it's trying to recognise that difference between being responsible for someone and being responsible to someone, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, when it comes to that, it's sometimes just a sense of understanding more than anything else. Like I've had this, I once had this conversation with my mom, actually, it's not exactly in the sense, but basically my son threw a tantrum because I said no to something he wanted. And I allowed the tantrum to happen. I just left him, allowed the tantrum. And my mom turned around and said to me, "You're allowing him to get away with it. He's walking over you." I'm like, "But he's getting away with what?" Because by the way, I wasn't really allowed to throw a tantrum when I was a kid. That was a big no-no. And yet I said to him, "Getting away with what?" He's not getting what he wanted. Like, he's screaming. Fair enough, he's allowed to scream, but he's still not getting the thing he wants.
Yeah.
I think it was about 2.5 at the time. And the thing you've got to realize is that he hasn't learned how to regulate his emotions. Which, by the way, a lot of adults in our age range, but older than us, still haven't learned that.
Yeah.
For the reason, first of all, they weren't allowed to experience them. They weren't allowed to, create them. And also, like, no one held them accountable for their emotions in a nice and account way. For example, so obviously he had his tantrum, got over the tantrum. I went, I hugged him. I could, explain to him again why he didn't. And he was perfectly fine. He was running within 2 minutes afterwards, actually could understanding fully. And then the next time it's having a different conversation with him. I mean, he's at a point now, he's 14, getting a tiny bit of an attitude. But it's, when I say tiny bit, it really is, because obviously he's got, hormones are kicking in and everything. But we have a relationship that we literally talk about anything and everything he wants. We talk about emotions, we talk about life, we talk about anything that's happening. And to a sense that he knows he can bring it, he can have it. And even if he's feeling anything, he knows he's allowed to feel it. But he doesn't feel the need to act it out in the sense that he did, like as in throwing himself on the floor, because he used to hit his head, by the way, a lot as well. Not he didn't hurt himself, but just enough to kind of prove a point, like, I'm upset with you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's having that, but we weren't allowed to have that. So obviously, I had to learn, going through my journey, how to regulate my own emotions you know, how to kind of feel like, okay, I'm angry now, but what do I usually do when I'm angry? How do I act? Do I pull away? Do I, you know, throw stuff? What do I do? Regulate that. You know, obviously you get to a point where like, I'm angry, I usually do this, just give me a minute, you know, you kind of deal with that. And the more you learn as well, like in business as well, and when you're running a team and when you're working with people, the more aware you become, the better you'll be able to work with them. Because first of all, you're allowed with your emotions. Also, because you're allowed, you know how you react in certain situations and what you do in certain situations. You're able to, what I was kind of say, compartmentalize that. You're able to deal with it. You're able to kind of like deal with it, and then you're able to deal with your team because you know how to put yourself in a state of like understanding. You know, understanding. What was the other word I was looking for?
Empathy, is
Yeah,
it?
empathetic compassion, all of that. So you can, because you come from a space of awareness, but also, by the way, when you go through your journey of like awareness, you not only become aware of what you're doing, you're becoming aware of what other people are doing and why they might be doing it and why they are taking the journey they are doing. So you become compassionate and empathetic to that. So then dealing with people in difficult situations becomes a lot easier and you're able to manage that. It still doesn't mean you're not going to act out in certain situations and certain things, because like I said, at the end of the day, you'll never finish project and you're going to reach something, you're going to reach a level and you're going to do something, unfortunately, that you've not dealt with before, that you haven't done. And then that becomes your next learning curve until the next one. But the further you go, the more you're able to understand and encompass and deal with and, you know, realize that it is not your responsibility. So sometimes, yes, I do have people getting angry at me for something that is not my responsibility. That is not my thing. And I'm at a point where I'm like, well, you can be angry, even at me, but it's got nothing to do with me. And that's not mine. And I'm not willing, where previously I would have taken that anger on and I would have felt like, oh, but I should have done this. Maybe I should have done this. And oh, I could have, you know, been better here. And maybe I would have gone down the spiral of breaking myself down because that's what I previously did. Where now I'm like, no, this is yours. If you want me to help you, then say, and I will help you. But I'm not going to take on your anger and your emotions or anything of mine.
Yeah.
And that's where the power really lies, to be honest.
Yeah, because otherwise you're a victim to people pleasing or trying to make sure that everyone potentially likes you. It goes back to that fear of being judged or not liked that I think puts so many people off from actually putting themselves out there. And it's quite we're probably at an age now where we value, we put so much emphasis on what other people think,
Yep.
quite aesthetically as well, so that we already go in if we've maybe got, I don't know, a spot on our face. We kind of like, oh my God, the world's ended. What are people going to think? Or maybe not, but in some senses, if something that's happened that's untoward, then reputationally, then it keeps us in the back foot. But you did touch on earlier around that whole state, and I know this is something that was within the coaching practices about going into almost like neutral, and before you were going into a situation, aligning with a higher
Vibration, yeah.
vibration of energy. Can you maybe just, I mean, this isn't something that maybe many people have came across in things before, but even just explore a little bit how that's been weaved into coaching, what that is, and how that really benefits, being able to align with a desired outcome, so to speak.
Yeah, so I mean, so it basically comes down to the pretense of like you can't fix a situation with the level of energy that created it in the first place. So everyone kind of knows the same. Was it Albert Einstein? Or?
The same level of consciousness that created the problem.
Yeah, so you can't, yeah, it was Albert Einstein. Yeah, so you can't fix a problem with the level of consciousness that created the problem. And a lot of time that's very difficult because you're like, well, I don't know what I'm doing to create the problem in the first place. And you don't know what vibration you're in, level, like how am I going to fix it if I don't know the level of vibration I'm in order to where I created this? I just know I always create this. Or I created it. Then again, this comes down to patterning, because generally speaking, if you get to that question where like, well, I don't know what I'm doing in order to create this all the time, chances are you are creating it a few times in your life, which means it's a pattern of behavior. And goes down to your patterning. But basically speaking, so your unconscious mind will basically, not unconscious mind, but the way you operate, your ego and your unconscious mind, the way you operate at the moment without a level of awareness, will always go down the path of least resistance. So you always go down the path that you think is the easiest, think is right, believe is right. And this will come down to, again, beliefs, religion, anything that you've taught yourself you need to do in order to be safe. So you'll kind of do that. So I did get to a place. So in order to get yourself into a high vibration and do that, to kind of simple terms without visioning, is basically you're gonna have to be like, okay, say for example, you created something, like, how did I get here in this first place again? You're gonna have to start breaking it down and be like, okay, I'm in this situation. And it's basically becoming aware of what you're doing and where you are, and like, and asking yourself the questions like, what am I doing? What have I done to get here? How am I feeling? You know, what am I experiencing? Which is the thing. And experience is not just, you know, how I'm feeling, but it's basically, what am I experiencing? I'm experiencing an immense amount of anger. I'm experiencing immense of like, what, you know, what's happening. And it's kind of to the point, okay, high vibration. So obviously there's, you know, visioning techniques you can do. And if you go on YouTube, there's quite a lot as well. But basically there's visioning techniques of like, it's almost like some form pulling yourself out of your state of what you are and putting yourself like, so if you had to say, for example, let's put it this way. So one way I kind of tend to work it, and I've worked with people this way if they're difficult to vision it, is, I was like, say for example, that you weren't even born yet. Or there's a version of you that's not even born yet. There's a version of you that's not, doesn't have any experience of life, any experience of anything, any experience of whatever. So basically it's a fresh person. Like they believe anything is possible. They're resourceful, you know, they can do whatever their mind sets them to. So there's a version of you that's like your wow, like the one you want to be. Actually, I'm going to put it that way. There's the one you want to be, right? Which knows everything is possible, resourceful, successful, got it all. They got the wow, the pizzazz, everything. And then there's you, where you currently are. Okay. Now, if you think about the situation you're going through, whatever you created, and you imagine your wow version, which, by the way, let's just say for argument's sake, they don't have your past. And they don't actually know where they're going in the future, really. They just know they got to create it. If they had to walk in now, look at your situation, and say, okay, what can I do to get myself out of the situation? What can I do? Because now it's their situation, but they don't have your past. They don't have your beliefs. They don't have your issues. They just know they need to create something out of the situation. How do you think they would do that? Like, what would they, like, how do you think would be the first thing they do? What do you think would be the first thing they do? And the reason I do it this way is because sometimes, and I've come across this a lot, like, obviously, like I said, there's different visions of like reaching high vibration energy and stuff. But I do find, for me personally, and for some people I have worked with, that the alternative way of like thinking about it and putting yourself in a thinking spot without it being you creates a sense of like, okay, what can I create? Kind of takes you out of it and like puts you in a higher perspective of like, okay, if my wow person can come up with a solution, then surely, you know, that's the thing.
It's almost like asking a higher version of you for the insights as to what to do.
Pretty much, exactly. Yeah. Well, I could have said that probably.
No.
But yeah, and to be fair, and I do that some because like the thing is like, and I do that sometimes as well. Like if I had to be like, okay, if the me from 10, what would the me from 10 years do about today? Like how would they act about today? Like how do I think the me 10 years from now is again done further learning developments, more success, more everything else that I want to create? How do I think they would show up in a situation? Would they care about it? Like I said, for argument's sake, you had a fight with someone. Would 10 years from now care about it? Would it be something that's trivial? And if it is, yes, what would I do about it? If it's not, then what's the issue? And you'll see quickly how using that version of yourself takes the emotion out of what you're trying to create. And you realize how much more powerful you really are than.
Yeah, I think it's obviously that what they would refer to as living in the end from the wish fulfilled, you know, from that state which already done, you know, and eliciting and stirring up the emotions and, you know, within your nervous system of already a place of safety of it's okay. It's
I mean, there are obviously other versions of wealth, like high vibration through meditation, through visioning exercises, through all of that. Which again, they're all very helpful and you can do that. And to be fair, I do them a lot as well, because now basically, but I remember when I first started, I didn't want to do them because I almost felt like something was expected of me that I didn't feel I was, I would have been able to do. So I felt it very overwhelming. And so I created the wow version of me, which which helped me. So, but like I said, everyone's got to find what works for them. So for me at the beginning, the wow version worked. Now I've got other versions, still use the wow version, but I still have other ways of doing it as well. But everyone's got to find what works for them, whether it's visioning exercises or meditations or just honestly just being honest with yourself, which is what the wow version does with me. Like, I have to be honest with myself, and that brings out the most in my opinion.
Nice, love it. No, I think that's quite a nice note to round things up on, because I think there's nothing more insightful by knowing that the power lies within you rather than having to go searching for the answers out with us. And as you say, there's finding what really works and resonates with you, because certainly, as you said there, sometimes there's resistance, isn't there, otherwise? And I only think that you need to develop something. You can't just try it once and then think, okay, it didn't work for me. We need to develop faith in that ability and really anchor ourselves to build up that relationship with yourself. Because as you said initially, you come into this world by yourself and you leave by yourself. And there's some people that can't stand their own company.
That's true, and it's very sad because, like I said, at the end of the day, it's just you.
Totally.
So
So, for anyone that's maybe you think curious and listening, wanting to, maybe not came across any of this work before, where they'd be partnering, working that relationship with themselves, what do you think would be, even like a starting point for them, if they were to go away from this conversation? What do you think the one thing you'd want to leave?
a starting point, I would say, first of all, anyone is to get clear on where they are, what they'd love to create, where they want to go. And even something as simple as journaling. I know a lot of people do that already, and chances are they've moved on from that. But if you're not doing that, then that's one thing I would, highly recommend you do, because you won't, and I honestly believe this, you're not going to go anywhere if you're not willing to get honest with yourself. And I always had this, like I used to say, like, you have to write like no one's going to read it. And you have to write like it really doesn't actually matter what you write. I mean, if you had to see some of the stuff I've written, oh my God. Like I've got this one thing where I've told my husband, and he's aware of it, so obviously I've got my journals, and I said, if anything ever had to happen to me, do not, for the love of God, read them. Just burn. Like seriously, just burn. Like, because sometimes it can get dark, but it can get light, and there's some things that he really should not be reading. And to be fair, I've gotten rid of some of them already, but the thing is, at the end of the day, you have to get to a point where you are honest with yourself. And that starts with journaling. And then, reading books like, Big Magic, if you're not come across, energy, the energy of the world, like your ego or anything like that, books like that, for example, is a very good starting point. What's my favorite one is what's her name? Jane Sonerson. It's my favorite book and I can't remember it. Give me 1 second. It is You're a Badass. Is You're a Badass? Yeah.
Jen Sincero?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're a Badass. Don't you? That one.
Yeah. I've got something like that. Think Like a Badass or something.
Yeah, You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. Yeah, Jen Sincero, You're a Badass. And I have to be fair, again, no, I'm very embarrassed here because I have actually read the book about 3 times. I'm on my 4th time.
Yeah, I've got that somewhere as well.
But it's a very good entry into where you're at what you're going through and what you can kind of do in order to get yourself out of, you know, where you want to be, or get yourself to where you want to be. But for me, I would say that is 100% the starting point, because going on an awareness journey, learning about your pattern, and especially when you learn about your pattern, you're going to have to be on some form of awareness journey already. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty hard.
Yeah.
You have to get to a point where you're willing to be honest with yourself. Because if you're not willing to be honest with yourself about your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your beliefs, what you're experiencing, you're not going to be honest with yourself in your awareness journey, which means it's going to work. To be fair, it's going to work, but not as well as it could be. And getting honest with yourself is probably the first thing to say. Like I said, start with "You're a Badass" or "Big Magic" and read that, or reach out to you. You're a coach. They can reach out to you.
I think, as you said, it's all about making what lies beneath the surface, the unconscious conscious, that inner narrative that is really the one that is happening when you remove yourself from the noise of everyday life. That's where you start to uncover what your beliefs are, your expectations, your assumptions, and which is really effectively shaping your life. So, no, amazing. Thank you so much, Mareli. That's just bringing a lot of clarity and depth to the conversation today. And I think from this, it's just a case that you've shown us that lasting transformation. It doesn't come from fixing ourselves. It's a continuous journey, but it comes from becoming more and more aware of patterns that we're running, and then just choosing differently. And I think, as you said, that's something that me and Evolving Heights, we believe quite powerfully in terms of what we can do is to really remember who we are beneath the noise. And the work that you've done and helped me, is just a beautiful reminder that we need to meet ourselves with honesty, presence, and courage. So for anyone that wants to connect further with you, obviously I'll drop your details below so you can connect with you and find out more information. But until next time, thank you again. And just remember to keep evolving, keep aligning, and remember the pattern isn't permanent and you are the one who gets to choose what comes next. Thanks again.